Hey everyone. So there's been a few things popping up that has, prompted me to make this little bit of a video. By no means will it be professional, so bear with me here. I had a fear yesterday while I was doing a very wonderful podcast that bringing up a specific species, or I guess a specific genre, to the podcast would cause a stir. Now, we're looking at one of them. This is Pseudoxenodon bambusicola, or the bamboo snake, or the bamboo false cobra. This particular girl, she's in blue right now, as you can see, with her milky blue eyes. The black on her pattern is pretty faded out, as well as the purple. And you're thinking, oh cool, purple snake. But before you get any further with that thought, please just stop right there. So many people in the last 12 hours I have seen oogle, which is fine. You could oogle these beautiful, wonderful animals, but not say they're suddenly your bucket list species. Do not say you are now looking for them in terms of owning them and keeping them. Do not contact friends of mine asking where to get them and if we could get sexed pairs. I promise you, anyone who has asked that question, or along the lines of, in the last 12 hours, has done exactly zero research other than Google images. And I say this, and I know I sound like a horrible human, and I apologize, but you need to research the animals you are interested in. And these particular animals are beyond next level for experienced keepers. So the first one you saw was Pseudoxenodon bambusicola. This wonderful lady is Pseudoxenodon carlschmidti. Now you can say, what's wrong with her nose? Let's take a look at her nose. Here is one of the very unfortunate situations you get with Pseudoxenodon. Her face is completely busted in. However, this has not happened with me. Story time. Pseudoxenodon come from China. They also come from Indonesia and sometimes Malaysia, depending on the species involved. They are obligate frog eaters. This means they only eat frogs. Do not expect to feed one mice. Do not expect to feed one lizards. Do not expect to feed them rats or birds or maybe even fish. Frogs and frogs only. Obligate frog eater. To the point, they don't even eat processed bullfrog legs. It's whole frog only. I decided with this video I'm making, it's time for me to tell people my best way, in my experience, to acclimate Pseudoxenodon. I was going to wait longer, at the exact 2-year mark, for my Pseudoxenodon macrops's, captive anniversary, to put this information out. But with the recent trend of many people asking where to find Pseudoxenodon, I think it's time for it to come out now. And this might scare the Jesus out of people. It is absolutely intended to scare the Jesus out of people. However, it'll be the honest to God truth. And again, I'm going to stress, do not get Pseudoxenodon. If you're well experienced, even 10 years reptile keeping, if you have never tried an obligate frog eater for any length of time, do not do it. And you're thinking, oh, it's just frogs, what's the difference? Everything about them is weird and different. As you can see, I have very elaborate setups for all of them. So, nitty-gritty detail. Being they come from these Asian places, especially China, they have a very long travel ahead of them. You will not find these captive bred at all. I don't care what people say, they are not captive bred. So if someone ever offers captive bred ones, run away. It's probably a scam. So this particular enclosure houses, I don't know where she is right now, a very special animal who has been with me for quite some time. I'll have to look for her in a little bit. But she is probably one of the longest lived Pseudoxenodon in captivity, and she is a beautiful example of Pseudoxenodon macrops. She has taught me a lot, and so did her others of the same species. So backstory, and this is the same with every single pseudo that comes through the trade. They get caught, they stay with the seller, the exporter, whoever it may be, for quite a while until orders are fulfilled to come across the ocean. During this time, everyone assumes these snakes require high humidity and are kept on wet moss, mud, water, just wet paper towel, anything along those lines, and this is where the beginning of many problems starts. People think, oh, they must come from all these rainforests. They don't. They come from very heavily planted streamside habitats, I guess we'll call them microhabitats, and they're actually on the drier side. They're not going to be some soggy rainforest. All my enclosures are around 40 to 60% humidity, and I give them a good spray once a week. Another thing about them, since they like to be near streams, there's a filter back there. You can see the water moving. Yeah, fast moving water, slower moving, and everybody has some sort of filtration system going on. And that is to keep the water clean, is to keep it moving and fresh. Otherwise, they do not drink from standing water. And that is another issue with them. Now, y'all are probably thinking, well, I don't see what's so hard about them. Well, once they come across, sorry, my brain's a little jumbled here trying to figure out the best way to explain this. They come across, they go to the importer that purchased them, that's probably going to resell them. Now, this is a very common thing we see, especially in the USA. Probably around 8 years ago was the last time they were really around in higher numbers. Maybe not that long. It could have been around 5 years ago. Either way, moot point. They go from point A to B, which is wild, to catcher, catcher to exporter, exporter to importer, and probably sold from there. Do you think they were fed frogs during this time frame? Probably not. Were they given moving water during this time frame? Probably not. We're looking at around a month to 2 months here already. And these animals, like all obligate frog eaters, have an incredibly fast metabolism. They eat twice a week with me. And that's just holding weight for the most part. So each snake gets 2 frogs a week. This is another thing too, you'll notice, keeping them, you look at nothing. Absolutely nothing. So let's say they survive. They get sold. You have a pet Pseudoxenodon. Congratulations. You stick it in quarantine because it's wild caught. It's probably full of parasites, especially being a frog eater. They get lots of nasty throat flukes. And you want to watch its fecal matter. You want to treat it for worms. But oh no, it's only been 3 days and it's dead. What happened here? So, oops, number 1, sterile quarantine. That is how you kill Pseudoxenodon with 100% guarantee. These animals are extremely high stress. And putting them from forest to sterile enclosure will guarantee a dead snake, especially one that's already failing to live. Their kidneys are probably shutting down, their immune system shutting down, and so is their gastrointestinal system. These animals need immediate care, as stress-free as possible, to survive. Every single one that's ever come into the States, to my knowledge, has never survived. If you could find one that has lived, please let me know. But I could guarantee you, they do not exist right now. So what I do, I get the animals, and immediately they're basically in intensive care. I have, as long as they do not have mites, they go straight into an enclosure like this. They go back into what we will call nature. That's the best we could do to de-stress them, is by putting them in a heavily planted bioactive. And I say bioactive, not naturalistic. That's a whole nother rabbit hole we will be going down one day. Temporarily, naturalistics could work. Fake plants do not work. Hides, plastic hides specifically, do not work. Blobs of moss do not work. You need to replicate a forest floor with moving water. Moving water, it's so important. So once you get that going, you release them back into the wild. And you'll never see them. Honestly, you will not ever see them for a while. But during this time, if you're lucky to have a few survivors from the very long, gruesome journey, their kidneys will be slowly failing them. You need to get them hydrated. Even if they look fine, they are not fine. They are failing. Every part of their body, their system is failing them. You have to, twice a day, give them subcutaneous injection of saline. Twice a day. Twice a day, I give them a slurry diet because their gastro system is failing as well. They cannot digest any heavy meals because they are so dehydrated, they're low on their electrolytes, and their gut bacteria is basically diminishing from stress and lack of diet. So add those together, they're not going to be eating a big meal without regurgitating it, and thus causing a bigger problem. So twice a day, they get a very specialized slurry diet that's easily digestible and high in calories. Let's see. There we go. Hi, pretty girl. This girl isn't even 100% yet, and she's been with me for a few months, but she is doing quite well considering her original state. So for about, let's say, for the first 2 weeks, when they get this slurry twice a day, along with their sub-Q injection for hydration, we monitor their weight every single day to make sure they're gaining. If they're gaining, that is amazing. You keep on with it. If they're not gaining, you give them more of a slurry diet. Now, I did anywhere between 1 to 3 cc twice a day, depending on the individual. I also added multivitamins to this to get the broad spectrum of any sort of vitamins and minerals they will require. Now, a very important thing is you do not worm them immediately. You do not worm any wild-caught animal immediately unless it's extremely healthy. In this sense, you are just introducing a toxin into their system and asking them to die. I started worming my guys much earlier than I wanted to, especially her. She had a very bad case of flukes in her throat. Now, this is very common with frog eaters. They have fluke, they have a whole bunch of intestinal worms. Sub-Q worms, like worms that are just under the dermis layer, aren't as common with this particular genus for some reason. And that's okay. They still happen. Very minimal, easy problem to deal with. We're worried about the stuff on the inside causing them to lose weight and dehydrate. So they all got panicured 3 times, and every 2 days, not every 2 days, 2 days after the panicure treatment, they would get praziquantel for the fluke problems. So that way they had a pretty broad spectrum of all the nasties that are in them to get kicked out. It was 3 treatments of worming. However, this still is not a guaranteed situation. While worms can be a killer, they are the least of my worries, honestly. Let's see if she will come out. The biggest killer still you have to worry about is dehydration. There she is. Dehydration and stress. And making sure they have weight on them. Everything I've been talking about, by the way, I do not suggest you do by yourself unless you know what you're dealing with. So when I got these guys, I wasn't just dealing with weight loss. I wasn't just dealing with internal worms. I'm dealing with infection too. So this is the Carl Schmidt eye, the same one as the one that has the bad nose rub. This one came in really well. I was very, very surprised with her. But the other one, I was dealing with stomatitis. So mouth rot, essentially. You get the nasty white infections in the mouth, broken teeth, all the while trying not to get bit while you're treating them twice a day for that, on top of everything else. It was 3 weeks of treatment. Come here, lady. Let's see if I could turn on this. Oh, let's see here. Well, you can see her that way. Can't see her pretty colors, but here she is. Anyway, so where was I? Mouth rot, right. So I was treating 3 snakes for a mild case of mouth rot. They all got over it. Wasn't a big deal. Said and done. And then Bambusicola, our wonderful purple snakes with the black bands. Bambusicola. So this is the one that everybody really seems to enjoy. These are the hardest ones in my experience for the entire genus. This particular girl, she's been giving me a hard time. She's years ahead of what she was when she first came in. She's gained around 20 grams since I got her. However, she still does not eat on her own, and that is the only reason why she's out right now. These animals should never be held unless you absolutely need to. And unfortunately, during their intensive care, you need to hold them. So with that alone, only the strongest animals survive. So she's out because I will have to assist feed her very shortly. But I figured while I have her out, it'd be a good one to show off for a nice up close encounter, I guess we could say, for Bambusicola. These guys have a plethora of their own issues. They just die sometimes, and they will look perfect, they will look amazing, but they are notorious for being an air snake. Now, when I say air snake, I mean they look like this. They look beautiful, nothing wrong with them, but when you pick them up, they feel like nothing. They feel like a feather, despite having this beautiful round shape. She was an air snake. She came around, and she has some really nice tone to her. She has good weight to her. She could use more, but she is in my comfort zone. Another issue these guys have right here is where their venom glands are. Now, nothing dangerous. They are just a rear fang species, and they like to have little problems with these tiny little glands right there. So I wish I had a, I'll use a stick. Right, oops, sorry little girl, sorry. Here and right here, they have a bad, I don't want to say history, but they have a bad rep for just having random swollen faces. And it always starts right here in the gland, and then it spreads down their face and their throat. And no one can figure out why this happens. I have no idea why this happens. There's not even a bacteria to really test for because it's in the muscle. This lovely girl had it happen to her. Thankfully, a couple rounds of oral Baytril did the trick. Swelling subsided, and she is good. At the same time, she also did have a glottis infection. So, no, I wouldn't say it's a glottis infection. It was where the tongue is. I guess that is glottis. I don't know. Whatever you want to call it. That area where the tongue sheath is was just full of really old, nasty bacteria. And it was so deep in her, I couldn't get it out at first. And she wouldn't really flick her tongue. Over time, I was able to massage the base of her throat right here. It kind of hung low, and that's how I knew she had an infection there. And then one day, it finally came out. Kept her on Baytril a little longer, never came back. So her tongue is officially fully functional, as you can see. Absolutely beautiful animals. It's a shame they're so hard to take care of. And she has only been with me since, I think it's been only end of February, early March. I have to double check that. And only now can I consider the other ones fairly acclimated into captivity. I wouldn't put her there just yet because she doesn't want to eat on her own despite being interested. She'll go up to the food, get very intrigued by it, but she quickly backs off and retreats into her hole. And that's okay. I won't pressure her until she absolutely has to eat, and we'll just keep trying. So we're going to go back to this enclosure, and we are going to talk about hides. So temperature in general. So these snakes like cold temperature. 68 Fahrenheit to 78 Fahrenheit is my comfortable zone. It's not an easy one to achieve, especially in summer. My air conditioner turns on as soon as spring hits. This particular enclosure has a burrow here and a burrow right in there. This is my easy access if I ever need. But it goes pretty deep. My whole hand fits in there. It's damp, very humid, very cold to the touch. I don't know if I could get a proper temperature reading this very moment, but let's stick it down there just to see what it might be. So the reasons I have this, they could choose to have a humid area, since the top is quite dry, and a cooler area. On average down here it tends to be between, depends on the time of day and time of year, but it could be anywhere from 66 degrees to 71 degrees. Up here will linger between 75, 78. Very rarely does it hit 80. I have this lovely creature right there. It's an alarm for me. As soon as it hits 81 degrees in this house, everything gets shut down. My phone has a little bit of an alarm go off, and that tells me time to shut the lights down because we're getting to a lethal temperature. Now 81 degrees short term is not lethal, but if they're in that consistently for days, it will become a lethal situation. They need it cold. They need an ambient, neutral humidity and temperature at all times. So 40 to 60% humidity with the option of anywhere of 70 to 80, sometimes 100% humidity is okay. But very short term or within their hides, these hides tend to be around 75%. So it's already down from 78 to 75, still going down. That one will take a while, but they need this option. They have spots they could hide in here if they want to be warm but hidden. We'll just keep watching this go down. So while we wait for the temperature to go down, let's see my freezer. Frogs. Frogs, frogs, frogs. Some geckos for other things. But 3 rows of frogs. You cannot substitute their food. If they have a frog diet and it's frog diet only, feed them anything else, you'll be force feeding them and they will die. A, from the stress of force feeding, and B, just from improper nutrients. You won't be feeding a vulture seeds or fruits. You won't be feeding a parrot carrion for obvious reasons. It's not meant for them. They will die. It's no different with species of snakes that have a specific diet. And Pseudoxenodon are very particular. They go through frogs fast. I have 3 rows of frogs. This is 1 round for me. For all the ones I have. 1 round twice a week. It gets expensive. Very fast. Saline, but better. So very important. For the first month or so they're with you to get hydrated. It's the fancy stuff. I love vets. Have a good relationship with your vet and they will help you. Another very important thing to have, again, you must have a relationship with your vet. You will need this. Very sketchy bottle of Panicure. However, again, from my vet. She puts them in these little droppers for me. Makes it a little easier for me to measure. So important to have a relationship with your vet, and you need this for Pseudoxenodon. Check up on the temperature. Still going down. We're at 73. You get the gist though. It's colder down there. And they should always have that option if it gets too warm for them. Always have an AC. Oh, hello. I lost the other one. Let's get this back on here. Alright. Take 2. A little bit of a blooper situation going here. There we go. A little hidey cave. So, all in all, I feel like I still sugarcoated this too much, but Pseudoxenodon are not good captives, guys. And you're probably wondering, well, why do you have them? Especially look at this one. She looks like trash, honestly. She's old, though. That's another thing. But she still has a ways to go. I wish my 2-year-old girl would come out. I'll see if I could find her after. But the reason why I have these is to teach you guys. I do not want to see these animals to be purchased without any knowledge. And unfortunately, that's happening all the time. People see them, they're like, cool, I love false cobras, I'm gonna buy one. And these people who are messaging me, messaging my friends, they're asking for these pairs of snakes who cannot get sexed. They're just asking if they could get sold to them, and then when we say, can you feed frogs? They're like, oh, they eat frogs? Do your research, guys. Well, I found the lovely girl. This is Pseudoxenodon macrops. She has been with me for 2 years. Now, this is a very individual. I get a lot of people going, I want Pseudoxenodon. I mean, I can't blame them. Look how beautiful she is. However, her story is the very reason you should not. I had 9 of these guys come in. I lost 4 immediately, and I had 5 doing exceptionally well. They were all eating, they all were wormed. I had an emergency move, and where I moved to, it unfortunately got a little too hot one day when I wasn't around, and I lost all of them except for 2. It was her and a male left. They did fine after that. Unfortunately, I did lose the male to a very unusual reason. He ate a frog sideways, and well, they're not very flexible, and I wasn't around, unfortunately, when that happened. and I lost him due to a failed attempt at eating food. I did have her being courted by him. Everything was going really well, but she is now the only one for Macrops. She's young, thankfully. I wouldn't put her more than 3 years old. She could get quite a bit larger than this. But she is now 2 years captive with me. Amazing animals, especially once they're acclimated. I already forgot what my previous tangent was. She's just so awesome. Oh, okay. I think I don't remember exactly where I was leaving off, but more or less, I keep these so you guys can learn about them. Learn from my mistakes, learn from my knowledge with acclimating them, and understand you cannot cut corners when it comes to these snakes. You cannot put them in a sterile quarantine. You will kill them. You cannot skimp out on hydrating them, because again, you will kill them. Their life is literally ticking second by second. And you'll be very lucky to have them acclimated into captivity. I have lost a fair share, unfortunately, but most of them came to me in rather piss poor conditions, and no matter what I did, I couldn't do much for them. The ones that were strong enough have pulled through and are doing well. The only downside is they're all female. Every single one I have here is a female. So hopefully this video made some sense. Hopefully people who are wanting Pseudoxenodon reevaluate the necessary requirements you need to keep them alive. And just know every minute they are with you, their life depends on it until they are settled and acclimated. Anyway, that is all. This is my little corner of stuff and things. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. And here's my little live frog spot for any urgencies. I do thawed only since they've all been wormed, but sometimes it's just required. I hope whoever was considering, though, takes a step back and realize the amount of care they actually need. It's not an overnight thing. It's a daily commitment for a month plus to get these guys on the road to recovery.